CG.
May we call the final speaker from closing proposition to take the stand.
QCG!
No more wearing.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are many reasons why I'm very happy to stand up here and talk to you on this motion. Not only to be speaking in this room, in this university, in this debate, but also on this issue. Because I think that everyone seems to be agreeing, including the opposition, that we need to change the church, that there is a fundamental flaw in the teachings of the church, that there are massive harms ensuing from these teachings. We live in reality on this side, they live in fairy tale land. They tell us that we're going to get magical, organic discourse change happening in the church. We ask you, why hasn't that happened yet? Why am I not entitled to be a priest purely because of my biology? Why have we not had any actual change on the attitudes towards homosexuals from the church? Because they're entrenched, because they can't actually have any discourse, because there's a no-go zone. When this stuff is entrenched in dogma, we get to change that in one fell swoop. It's awesome. We also think that, it's pretty ridiculous that in this fantastic debate, we're getting model bashing out of the off. They not do a bit better than that for us, please. We figured we're going to fake it. We're going to fake it pretty damn well. We're going to publicise it. It's going to be really clear. That's fine. They told you that. Get out if that's your biggest problem. Then we're not going to do it well enough. Why is the Roman Church harmful for so many people? First of all, God tells you about the nature of religious beliefs. It's not like you go to the supermarket and pick out Catholicism. It's something that you believe yourself. It's something you feel a connection to. It's how you answer the biggest questions for you. Why is it really harmful that that association that you make then turns you into an association with homophobia? I'm so sick of the church bashing debates. I'm so sick of having to defend people like my father, who is a Catholic, and people believe because he's a Catholic he must hold these beliefs. That's massively unfair for these people. This needs to change, and this is the only way to change it. We also think, as Gus tells you, that it's massively harmful for these people who do feel this connection with the Catholic Church, who are told that they are going to hell because of this other intrinsic belief that they hold, which is that they want to have sex with people of the same gender, they want to marry them and love them. That's utterly unfair. That's torture. To tell someone that you must choose between happiness in this life or torture in the next life. That's horrendous. Why aren't you stopping this? Why aren't you changing this? The practical harms that we've been outlining through POIs and everything. The very fact that the government in Uganda can say what we are doing is God's work. What we are doing is morally legitimate. Ye are the immoral ones. We're going to hang you for being gay. We're going to publish lists of homosexuals because we were doing God's work. Why is it brilliant that we remove that legitimacy that's created by relying on the church? We say it makes it more difficult. It makes it easier for people to criticise it, because you can't criticise things that come from dogma, as Gus tells you. You can't engage with it in a proper debate. So even in the Western liberal democracies, when we're talking about things like gay marriage, you cannot possibly engage with it when the answer comes back is God said no, no, no. That's not a proper dialogue. You can't actually create real change. So when the church is the standing that Gus tells you about, because it's so entrenched in our society, in terms of how it's entrenched in education and everything, you can't have a real discourse about that. That's a massive harm again. Okay, in terms of yeah, go on.
Okay, the word of the Pope can say unbaptized babies from limbo, which is more powerful to actually changing the beliefs.
Yeah, okay, we think this nonsense about it's only going to be a piece of paper is just ridiculous. We think what we're proposing here is a massive shift in policy of the church. We're going to forge a document, we're going to publicise it, we as the Catholic Church, as the Pope, he's going to come out and say, we believe this. We do think that specifically from the analysis that you guys gave us, this is the best way to effect change within the Catholic Church. Because you told us that the only time change has ever happened is when it's been top down. That was how Vatican II managed to actually change things. You did the legwork on that for us, guys. You proved to us here that there's no such thing as organic grassroots change in a dogmatic hierarchical institution, i.e. the church. It only happens under our proposal. When it comes from the top, when it's backed up by scripture that gives it that moral legitimacy and that kind of spiritual, mystical stuff that they buy into in that church. We think that's the only way that you actually get that change. Okay, we also think that where did this homophobia come from in the first place? We don't believe that Jesus hated the gays. We don't believe that Jesus was against gay marriage. We think he probably didn't think about it that much. We think bigots within the church opportunise on the vagueness, right? They opportunise on the lack of clarity that was there. And these guys tell you that we're bringing clarity to it. Why is this? This is the fighting fire with brimstone, right? Because we think that when something has been created by bigots, because they're nasty people who want to perpetuate this lie, that it was immoral to love a person of the same gender. When they've been misusing this, when they've been abusing this vaguity, the only way you can actually tackle that is by going directly to the source, creating that clarity, and removing any legitimate claim they have to it. Worst case scenario, okay? Two things happen. We get a schism and all the bigots leave. I think that's a win for the Catholic Church, okay? Second of all, worst case scenario, if we do have a debate about this actual scripture, what happens? You get discourse for the first time. And what happens? There's not one group who can claim moral legitimacy, who can claim word of God being on their side. Because now there's two claims to that. So it's a fair fight at the very least. So at the very worst case scenario, we're getting a real discussion. The moderates and the non-homophobic people within the Catholic Church now have an ability to make their case and no longer be called heretics. They can now actually engage and defend their beliefs. And that's fantastic, don't you agree?
Free speeches, and there was some information to you. I've already told you that there is scripture to justify all of the things they want. Why is that not acceptable? Why won't you answer?
Okay, yes, there's an awful lot of scripture, right? But we think, first of all, because of the clarity we're going to be offering with this, it's going to be a trump card. That was the proposal you got. Exist in the debate you're in, guys. It can't just exist outside of it. We think that the fundamental point is, first of all, the clarity, because I just told you, even if we do get diverging opinions and people quoting Leviticus and people quoting whatever we're calling our new Bible, again, that's still a massively better reality than the one we're existing in now, which I just explained to you, because it becomes a fair discourse. It removes the trump card of one person being able to rely on a holy book, because that always wins the argument, and that's ridiculous. So that's what's changed when we create a new argument and a new document that people can rely on, and we can get a real debate. We think that under all the analysis that we told you, we will actually win this debate, but even if we don't, people can now exist within the Catholic Church. The gay teenager can now find his part of the Catholic Church and says, no wait, I actually can now properly connect with this Jesus Christ lad that I seem to think too. I now can feel legitimized and no longer feel like I'm a horrible person and an immoral person because of the beliefs. So fundamentally, even if it is still being debated, he at least has that. And even at that, the people within the Catholic Church no longer have to be called homophobic by their association with the Catholic Church, because at least it's not decided, at least it's still being debated at the very worst case. Like I said, we think we're going to win this and we're going to forge it really, really well. So we're very happy to say that even at their worst case, even if they do their best work in the next speech, they still have a worse reality under theirs than under ours. I'm so delighted to propose.